Mr. Trump is always is unpredictability. There is always an uncertainty that surrounds Mr. Trump's behavior, which countries find very difficult to respond to. So it becomes a question of responding to him on a case-by-case basis.
Today we have with us Professor Harsh Pant. He is Vice President at ORF, Observer Research Foundation. He is also visiting professor at King's College London. Welcome, Professor Pant. Please take us through the changing dynamics of India-US relations under Trump 2.0.
Hi, thanks. India-US relations have been growing from strength to strength. They have been for the last several decades now, in fact, and under different administrations. So whether it was a Republican in power or Democrat in power in the US, or whether it had been the UPA and now the NDA for the last decade, we have seen an upward trajectory in this relationship. And primarily that relationship, therefore, has been driven by underlying structural factors, the realities that both nations confront in the world, in the Indo-Pacific, as the balance of power changes and China rises. So I think those factors have allowed the relationship to reach a point where today some very difficult differences can also be navigated relatively easily. There has been an institutionalization of the relationship, an unprecedented institutionalization, where every layer of the government is engaged with each other, and that has given the two nations room to maneuver. And I think the Trump factor is very interesting, because if you go by the logic of his last tenure, Trump 1.0, it was a relatively mild one for India. Given that he had come as a major disruptor, he was challenging a lot of the assumptions of the U.S. foreign policy. But if you think about how the relations with India went, they went very well, and Prime Minister Modi was able to carve out a personal relationship with then President Trump. And it resulted in a very forward-looking engagement, where the relationship also grew from being a bilateral one to being a broader global one, where we had, for example, the Quad being resurrected in 2017. So if you go by that logic, you would see in Trump 2.0 a great degree of optimism about India-US relationship, that it's very unlikely that there will be a major disruption in the relationship, and it's possible that there are certain areas where we can surpass our past achievements. There is, of course, the big factor with Mr. Trump is always his unpredictability. There is always an uncertainty that surrounds Mr. Trump's behavior, which countries find very difficult to respond to. So it becomes a question of responding to him on a case-by-case basis. But by and large, if the past is anything to go by, it's likely that we will see a robust India-US relationship and a very forward-looking India-US relationship.
So you have mentioned about some areas of concern. Would you like to, elaborate more on that?
One, of course, remains the whole issue of tariffs, and he has, of course, called India a tariff king in the past, and he has also mentioned India in the same breath as China. And of course, he has made it clear that he intends to raise tariffs across the board for Chinese products. So China is, of course, going to be a very, very important reference point for his behavior. Yet again, if you go back to his first term in office, while even then he was labeling India and China together, he managed to carve out and give India a certain space. So where China's tariffs were raised for China across the board, for India it was more sectoral in nature, it was more compartmentalized, and India could get away with certain things, unlike China, and India could get away by engaging Trump much more productively. I think the focus on great power competition and the focus on China for Trump means that India can always make an argument that, look, of course, there are economic issues between India and China, but if you target India, then you also lose a very important partner in managing China. So instead of, I think, becoming very confrontational, perhaps there is a space for a new kind of a relationship, a trade relationship to emerge. But that remains an area of concern. I don't think India or any other country, particularly India, can get away from the tariff war that might ensue once Trump is in office, and India would be targeted in some ways, and India will have to brace for that and prepare for that. The other issue is immigration, where of course he has decided that he would have this largest deportation program in American history. He would be targeting illegal immigrants, and he has mentioned the fact that he likes talented Indians, skilled Indians to come into the US. So there is some confusion exactly what, in terms of immigration, what will be his approach.
What will be the impact of Trump getting re-elected on India, Canada diplomatic standoff?
In some ways, it might be good for India. I think Trump, because one of the arguments that is being made by Canada and to a certain extent by Biden administration, that this is about principles, that this is about values, this is about rule of law, and that what has happened and what India is being alleged to have done goes against the grain of basic values that democracies espouse and democracies pursue. I don't think Mr. Trump has any love lost for this kind of an argument. I don't think he believes or he has ever made an argument along these similar lines. I think where he would be more interested is that what can India do for the US, which is a very pragmatic transactional element about India-US relationship, not some very esoteric debate about rule of law, etc. So I do think that in some ways we can anticipate the dilution of this issue under Mr. Trump. Of course, we also know that he himself is under, his cases are being, the Department of Justice is negotiating how they can get rid of his cases, and he himself has had a bad bout with the law agencies in the US. So I don't think that his appreciation of this issue would come from the similar axis as perhaps Mr. Trudeau's is. And that will make for a very interesting, I think, juxtaposition.
India, Bangladesh, and US, the complexities involving the three nations. How do you see that going?
I think Mr. Yunus might be, a bit concerned at this point, because clearly a lot of the support that he's been getting from Washington is likely to die down. It's unlikely that Mr. Trump is going to continue to support the kind of policy that perhaps Biden administration had vis-a-vis Bangladesh. I think we are going to see a tightening of approach towards Islamist extremism emanating from Bangladesh. And I don't think the argument that was made by the Biden administration vis-a-vis Sheikh Hasina is going to cut much ice with Mr. Trump. I think the argument was that, look, this is not a very democratic country under Sheikh Hasina, and therefore anti-Hasina forces have to be propped up. I don't think that's an argument that works for Mr. Trump, and I don't think we will see that kind of a support coming for Mr. Yunus, who himself is not really a democratically elected leader of Bangladesh.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for your expertise.